Debt is the cleanest kind of power, cleaner than a bullet, cleaner than a threat. Henrik Grady had built his entire world on that principle. Every contract, every handshake, every quiet arrangement managed through carefully maintained ledgers that no one outside a very small room was ever supposed to see. He was not a man who panicked. He was not a man who ran. He ran at 11:17 on a Tuesday night, through the rain-slicked underground garage of a King Street office tower, because the woman who kept his books had just whispered something into his phone that made his chest feel like it had been cored out with a spoon. Rilla Moss had been working late. That was normal. She always worked late. What was not normal was the locked storage room on the 14th floor of the Harbour Pinnacle Hotel, the annual gala for Greater Toronto financial professionals she had attended on her own initiative, or the man who had followed her away from the canapé table and down the east corridor with the patient, unhurried certainty of someone who already knew how this ended. His name was Prentice. She had never met him in person, but she knew his name the way she knew all the names she was never supposed to know. From invoices she was told were routine, from ledger entries that didn't quite balance until you understood what was actually moving beneath them. Prentice ran the financial side of the Halloran outfit. The Hallorans ran the east end of the city, the port, and a chain of holding companies that were quietly eating into the same harbour real estate Grady controlled. Rivals, not the abstract civilized kind. She had not meant to come to the gala at all. She had meant to attend a panel on forensic accounting and leave by 9. She had meant a lot of things before she looked up from the hors d'oeuvres and found Prentice standing 4 feet away, holding a glass of Riesling and smiling the specific smile of a man who had already won. The storage room had a metal shelving unit, a broken projector on a dolly, and no window. The door had a push-bar latch she had managed to engage from the inside. She could hear him in the corridor. Not threatening, not yet, just present, the way a draft is present before you realize a window is open. Her hands were not shaking. That surprised her. Her chest felt like packed ice, but her hands were absolutely still as she opened her contacts and scrolled past H. She had never called this number for herself. She pressed it anyway. 4 blocks north, in the glass tower that housed Grady Capital's legitimate offices on the 31st floor, Henrik Grady was signing a property transfer agreement when the call came through. He was a man built for stillness, 6'2", with the kind of face assembled from practical requirements rather than aesthetics, jaw too sharp, eyes too pale, a scar running from the corner of his left brow to his temple that he had never once offered to explain. 41 years old. 20 of those years had gone into building an operation that no one outside a very small room was supposed to be able to map. Osi, his second, was leaning against the window watching the harbour lights when the phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. Rilla. She did not call. In 3 years, she had never called. She sent encrypted messages and annotated PDFs, and on one memorable occasion, a handwritten note that simply read, "The Callaway account is wrong, and I want it on record that I said so first." She communicated in numbers and documentation, and the occasional devastating one-liner. She did not call. He picked up on the second ring. Moss, he was already standing. "Mr. Grady." Her voice was very quiet, not whispering, controlled, deliberately controlled, the way you hold something breakable when your hands are starting to go. "I'm sorry to bother you. I know it's late." "Where are you?" Harbour Pinnacle Hotel, East 14th floor, storage room, doors locked from inside. A pause, very short. Prentice is in the hallway. The name landed like a flat hand across a table. Osei must have seen something change in Grady's face because he straightened without being told, his hand moving to his jacket. "How long has he been out there?" "About 12 minutes. He hasn't tried the door." A breath. "He's waiting. He knows I can't stay in here all night." "He knows who you are to me. It was not a question." "He called me the Grady bookkeeper, so yes." Grady was already moving. Down the hall, jacket in his hand, not yet on, taking the stairs because the elevator required waiting and he was finished waiting. "Rilla," He had not used her first name before, not once in 3 years. He was not sure why he used it now, except that it was dark and she was alone, and the formality suddenly felt like a form of cruelty. Stay in the room. Keep the door engaged. Do not open it for anyone until you hear my voice. A silence, shorter than he expected. How long? She asked. 15 minutes. Okay, just that, okay? He did not hang up. He pocketed the phone with the line open, the faint sound of the hotel's ventilation system, and Rilla Moss's deliberately even breathing traveling with him out into the rain. He drove himself. Ozzy argued for 30 seconds, then gave up and climbed into the passenger seat, with the resigned expression of a man who had made peace with not being listened to. The rain was a serious Toronto rain, the kind that turns Lakeshore into a mirror and makes the traffic signals look like bleeding neon. Grady took Yong at a speed that made Osei grip the door handle in silence. He thought about how he had hired her. 3 years ago, she had shown up to an interview that had already destroyed 6 candidates. 2 had left mid-session when they understood what kind of operation they were actually interviewing for. 3 had tried to negotiate immediately and been shown the door. 1 had attempted to record the conversation on his phone, which Ozzy had confiscated with a pleasantness that was itself a form of threat. Rilla Moss had been 23. She had come in a second-hand blazer that was half a size too big, carrying a single folder and no bag. She had sat down across from Grady and looked at him the way an accountant looks at a number that does not add up, not afraid, exactly, but deeply, professionally skeptical. He had given her the standard test, a modified ledger with 4 deliberate errors, 2 obvious and 2 designed to require understanding what the money was actually doing beneath the surface. She had found all 4 in 11 minutes. Then she had looked up and said, very calmly, "The 4th one isn't an error, it's a contingency payment. You moved it into the maintenance column so it wouldn't flag on an audit. I'd have done the same, but I'd have split it differently." She had set the folder on his desk. "Do you want to hear how?" He had hired her the same afternoon. In 3 years, she had reorganized his front company structures, flagged 2 embezzlement attempts from within his own organization, and once, when a city councillor had tried to renegotiate a harbor rezoning agreement mid-process, she had produced a 12-page document detailing the councillor's financial conflicts of interest with a turnaround time of 4 hours. She never asked what happened after she sent the document. She never asked what happened after anything. She was the only person in his orbit who treated him like an inconvenient employer rather than something to be feared or appeased. He had decided, some time ago, that this was either the bravest or the most oblivious thing he had ever witnessed. He suspected it was neither. He suspected it was something harder than both. A woman who had run out of things to be afraid of long before she ever walked through his door. He pulled the car up onto the hotel's service bay and got out without parking it. He found Prentice on the 14th floor, exactly where Rilla had said, standing near a potted plant in a dark suit, his one associate positioned near the stairwell exit, wearing the expression of someone who had arranged things to his satisfaction. When he saw Grady step off the elevator, the satisfaction recalculated. "This is personal," Prentice said. "You followed a woman to a hotel corridor and locked her in a storage room." Grady stopped 6 feet away. "Tell me what part of that you thought was going to stay professional." "She keeps your books." Prentice's voice was measured. "That makes her a resource. The Hallorans are prepared to discuss terms, a transition of the harbor contracts, no disruption. We need access to someone who understands the actual numbers. She's not available for that conversation." "Grady." "She works for me," he said it quietly. "She is not a bargaining resource. She is not a pressure point. And this conversation is over." He let that settle. "Tell the Hallorans I'll hear their proposal through the standard channel. If anyone from your organization approaches her again, at a gala, at her office, on the street, there won't be a proposal to hear. Are we clear?" Prentice held his gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded once, picked up his glass from the windowsill, and walked toward the stairwell without another word. His associate followed. Grady waited until the door closed. Then he walked to the storage room and knocked twice. "It's Grady." A pause, the click of the pushbar releasing. The door opened. Rilla stood in the frame. She was wearing the kind of dress you wear when you are trying to look like you belong at an event where everyone else earns more than you. Dark green, sensible, and she had a conference lanyard still around her neck that read Rilla Moss, financial analyst. Her hair was slightly out of order. Her face was composed with the meticulous care of someone who had been working very hard on, composed for the past 40 minutes. She looked at him. She looked at the empty corridor behind him. "He's gone," Grady said. She let out a breath, not dramatic, the breath of someone setting down something very heavy they had been carrying for too long. She reached up and took the lanyard off and folded it very precisely in her hands. "Thank you," she said, "for coming." "Don't thank me." He did not mean it harshly. "I'm going to anyway," she said. He almost said something, then he didn't. "Come on," he said instead. "We're not taking a cab." He took her to the office. Not his apartment. That was not a line he intended to cross tonight. But the 31st floor, where there was a conference room with a couch and a coffee machine and a view of the lake that cost more per square foot than most people's monthly salary. She sat at the conference table and wrapped both hands around a mug and looked at the harbor lights below with an expression he could not entirely read. "He wanted me to give him access to the harbor accounts," Rilla said, not looking away from the window. "The rezoning transfers from last year. He was going to wait me out. He knew I'd have to come out eventually. He was going to be patient and reasonable and completely terrifying about it." A pause. "He was good at it. He's been doing it for 20 years. Is it going to get worse?" She turned then. Her eyes were dark and very direct. "For me?" He considered the easier answer. "Possibly. The Hallorans know you exist now. They know what you do." She absorbed this, drank her coffee. "My apartment," she said. "Do they know where I live?" He did not answer immediately, which was itself an answer. "I see." She set down the mug. Her hands were very steady. "Then I shouldn't go home tonight." "No," he said, "you shouldn't." O.C. confirmed it at 2 in the morning. 2 men had gone to her building in Leslieville. They had gone through her unit looking for documentation. They had not found anything useful. They had left. Her grandmother's ring, a thin gold band she kept in the bottom drawer of her nightstand, was still there. Grady sent someone to retrieve it before dawn. He told her himself. She sat with both hands flat on the glass conference table and looked at nothing in particular, running through the implications with the systematic quiet of someone reworking a budget after an unexpected loss. "My backup drives are at the office, encrypted. They won't have gotten anything," she paused. "The ring is the only thing I actually care about." "It's in the safe downstairs," he said. "Ozzy's man brought it an hour ago." She stopped, just for a second, then she nodded. "Why am I worth this much trouble to you?" she asked, quietly, no accusation in it. A genuine question, the way she asked questions about numbers that did not square, like she was owed the real figure. "Because they came after you through me," he said. "That makes it my responsibility." "That's not an answer." He looked at her steadily, he said. "It isn't." The silence after that was different, more honest than comfortable. By 6 the next morning, his conference room had become a different kind of room. 4 of his people around the table, maps and coffee, and the focused quiet of men moving towards something with no intention of stopping, O.C. at the window. The groundwork for a response already laid. Then Rilla walked in. She was wearing yesterday's clothes, brushed out with the stubborn practicality that refused to let circumstance get the better of presentation. Laptop under her arm, notepad. She looked at the room. The room looked back. "The harbor reasoning transfers," she said, without preamble. "The Hallorans want them because, out of context, they look like a kickback arrangement with the Port Authority. In context, it's a legitimate deferred fee under a construction agreement. She set her laptop on the table and opened it. Prentice doesn't want to expose it. He wants to hold it. So the question isn't whether it holds up legally. It does. It's who else he's already shown it to. Nobody spoke. 2 city councillors, O.C. said slowly. We picked that up through a contact 40 minutes ago. Then we need the full construction agreement timeline filed with the city clerk's office before 9 a.m., Rilla said. If it's on public record before he tries to use it, he has nothing. It becomes a matter of public record he can't control. She opened a new window. Who's your contact at the clerk's office? Grady said the name. Can they receive a filing at 7:30? For us, yes. Then I need 2 hours and someone to bring me more coffee. One of his men, Torres, who was generally impervious to anything, got up and went to find the coffee without being asked. Grady sat down across from her. He did not hover. He watched her work with the same still attention he gave to things that required his genuine consideration. She did not look up, but her voice, when she spoke next, was not entirely aimed at the screen. I'm not doing this because I'm scared, she said. I know, he said. I'm doing it because they walked into my home, she said, and because I am very tired of other people deciding what my life is worth. He was quiet for a moment. The ring is in the safe downstairs, he said, whenever you want it. She stopped typing, just for a second. Then she resumed. Thank you, she said. It was the second time. He did not tell her not to. The filing went through at 8:47. By noon, the leverage Prentice had been assembling for 3 weeks had effectively ceased to exist. By 3 in the afternoon, Grady had taken a meeting with the Halloran outfit's neutral representative. Not a negotiation, exactly, more of a notification. The harbor contracts were not on the table. Rilla Moss was not a resource. The boundary was not subject to discussion. The Hallorans backed down faster than he had expected. They had calculated the cost and found it unfavorable. That was how things were supposed to work. Not with bullets, but with arithmetic. With the correct understanding of what something would actually cost. He went back to the office at 5. Rilla was still at the conference table. His people had cycled through the day around her, and she had stayed at her end and worked without asking for anything except the Wi-Fi password and a pen that actually functioned. The room was empty when he came in. Just her, the laptop, the last cold inch of a coffee she had forgotten. She looked up. It's done, he said. I know, Ozzy texted. She closed the laptop. The clerk's filing is the elegant part. They can't unring that bell. It was your idea. It was the obvious move if you understand what they were actually trying to do with the documents. She said it without modesty and without pride, just accurately. He sat down, not at the head of the table, at the side, close enough that this was something different from a business meeting. Your apartment, he said. You can go back tonight. I'll have someone on the building for the next week. She nodded. She looked at her hands on the table. About what Prentice said. About what I know. About the fact that they know what I know. She paused. I'm a liability if I'm separate from you. They can use me as leverage because I'm adjacent. Useful enough to target, not inside enough to actually be protected. He was very still. I'm not asking for a promotion, she said, entirely dry. I'm doing math. She looked up at him. The safest version of this, strategically, is one where I have actual standing, real authority. Not just the bookkeeper, something with weight behind it. What are you proposing? I want to know what I'm actually working for, she said. Not the laundered version, the real one. And I want the authority to restructure the financial architecture properly. Not to hide things, but to legitimize what can be legitimized. You're running money through structures that are 20 years old. Some of them are genuinely unnecessary. You could be cleaner than you are. Cleaner means less exposed. Less exposed means harder to threaten. He looked at her for a long moment. That's a significant scope change, he said. I know what I'm worth, she said, not arrogantly, just precisely, the way she had said I'd have done the same, but I'd have split it differently in the interview 3 years ago. He thought about the hotel corridor and the sound of her breathing through the phone speaker. Deliberate, controlled, refusing to come apart in a storage room because there was no one else to hold it together. He thought about her hands, flat and steady on the table, when she learned they had been in her home. He thought about, I am very tired of other people deciding what my life is worth. CFO, he said. Legitimate title, legitimate salary out of the Grady capital structure. Actual decision-making authority over the financial operations. All of them. You report to me and I want to know before you make any structural change. But the call is yours. She held his gaze. And my ring is in the safe downstairs, she said. Yes. Then we have a deal. She put her hand across the table. Not to shake, just placed it there, an inch from his. Such a small, odd gesture that he looked at it for a moment before he understood what she was offering. He put his hand over hers. Not a handshake, something slower. His thumb moved across her knuckles, just once, the kind of touch that is asking something and knows it. She did not pull away. Rilla, he said. The second time he had used her name, he thought she noticed. I know, she said, quietly. She turned her hand over under his, and that was something else entirely. 8 months later, the Halloran outfit had not disappeared from the city. You cannot erase a 40-year operation in 8 months, but it had contracted, pulled its borders inward, and stopped reaching toward the harbor. The rezoning had finalized in March. The port contracts had renewed under Grady Capital's holding structure, cleaner and more legally airtight than anything Grady had run in the previous decade. The 31st floor looked different. Not the view. The lake was still the same cold beauty, flat and grey or bright and silver depending on the season. But there were 2 desks in the main office instead of 1, and the wall that had held a single organizational chart now held 3, reorganized in the clean, economical hand of someone who understood that the most powerful structures are the ones with no weakness to find. Rilla was on the phone when Grady came back from a meeting with the Port Authority's legal team. She had a pen behind her ear and one hand on a spreadsheet and was saying, in the tone she reserved for people wasting her time, "That's not what the agreement says. I can send you the page number if that would help you find it." She caught his eye across the room. Something in her expression settled. Not softened, exactly. She was not a woman who softened, but the particular settling of someone who has found the place where the numbers finally balance. He crossed the room. She wrapped up the call with a precision that left no room for further argument and set the phone down. "How did it go?" she asked. "They signed," he said. Of course they did. She said it with such complete absence of doubt that it almost made him want to laugh. He didn't, but almost. He picked up her mug from the desk, checked if it was empty, went to refill it without asking. She watched him do this with the look she had given him for 8 months now, that careful, clear-eyed assessment of a woman who had decided, on balance, that a complicated thing was worth the effort of understanding. He brought the coffee back. She took it from his hand, and their fingers stayed in contact a second longer than necessary, because they had both decided, somewhere around month 4, that they were done pretending that was an accident. "The Eastview property," she said. "I've been through the holding structure, and there's a way to dissolve the shell cleanly and move the asset into the legitimate portfolio. Saves us around $400,000 a year in compliance overhead." "Show me after 6, he said. "You have a dinner." "I have a dinner, I'll leave early." She looked at him over the rim of the mug. "You never leave things early." "I'm reconsidering my priorities," he said. She did not smile. She was not a woman who smiled to fill silence. But what she gave him instead was something better, the look of someone who has stopped waiting to see if the ground will hold and started walking forward anyway. "After 6, she said. He went back to his desk. Outside, the city moved through its ordinary Thursday afternoon, and 31 floors below, the harbor sat in the November light, cold and quiet and entirely, completely theirs.